He walked alone. That was the first thing you'd have noticed. A god moving through cold stone corridors without attendants, without ceremony, carrying something cupped against his chest that you couldn't quite see. His face gave nothing away, not grief, not nobility, something colder than either. The face of someone who has already run the numbers and found the answer waiting at the end of them. His name was Prometheus. It meant forethought. He had earned it. He'd been there when the old world cracked open and the new one took its place. He'd watched the throne get built stone by stone and understood, before anyone else did, exactly how it would all come out. He'd used that gift to put someone on the throne. He'd watched that someone sit down. And then something was decided in a room he walked out of. Now he was moving through corridors no one else was using, holding something tight against his chest, and the expression on his face wasn't the face of a god who'd been defeated. It was the face of a god who had already decided what to do about it. He remembered the light first, the particular quality of it in a hall built for a god who had just won everything. Zeus hadn't built it. Prometheus had helped. That was the part that kept returning. The war had been long, the kind of war that unmakes the world and builds a new one in the rubble. The Titans, the old powers, the ones who had ordered the cosmos before, they were gone now, sealed in the dark below everything. And Prometheus had chosen the winning side. He'd seen how it would end before the first blow landed, which meant his loyalty to Zeus had never been blind faith. It had been math. Zeus had rewarded that loyalty with a throne room and a crown. And then, in that same room, with that same crown still new on his head, he'd looked at humanity, small, temporary, already dying by their own fragile biology, and decided they were no longer necessary. Not conquered, not punished, simply ended, the way you clear a field. Prometheus remembered the exact quality of the silence after Zeus finished speaking. Nothing marked the moment when a king decided a species should stop existing. He'd walked out of that room already knowing 3 things he was going to do, in order, with full knowledge of what each one would cost. Zeus didn't know that yet. The gods had made humanity with foresight, the same gift Prometheus carried, only smaller, crueler. Humans could see it all, the full arc, beginning to end. Pull back far enough and you could see all of them at once, scattered across hillsides and valley floors, sitting at the edges of rivers they'd never crossed, standing in doorways of shelters they barely used. Not starving, not wounded, just still. The child born knowing the exact shape of the darkness that would take her. The man sitting beside a fire he wouldn't light, watching himself die in it. Not metaphor, not fear, sight. Clear, total, inescapable. And so they waited. They'd learned, without anyone teaching them, that movement only brought the end closer. So they stayed, and the world went unlived around them. Prometheus moved among them without making a sound. He was looking for what was worth saving, and he found it in the small things, the way one of them reached toward another in sleep, the way they stayed near each other even when proximity offered no advantage. Something in them wanted. They just couldn't move toward it. So he reached into each of them, one by one, and he took the knowledge away. Not a gift yet, a removal, a surgical absence where the future had been. They wouldn't see their deaths coming anymore. They wouldn't see anything coming. He replaced that clarity with something that had no name yet, a warmth in the chest with no object, a leaning forward feeling that pointed at nothing specific. The Greeks would later call it blind hopes, hope with its eyes removed. It sounds like a mercy. It also sounds like a wound. He didn't give them a reason to hope. He took away their reason not to. One by one they blinked. One by one they stood. And for the first time they began to walk, not toward anything they knew, but toward something they could feel. Prometheus watched them go. He'd given them the one thing he could never give himself, the god of foresight handing out the mercy of not knowing. But this was only the first of 3 things he'd come to do. He went to the forge at night, not because darkness would hide him, he knew it wouldn't, but because the forge belonged to Hephaestus, the god who made things, the divine craftsman whose hands had shaped the weapons of Olympus itself. And Hephaestus kept the fire burning even when no one was working. The coals stayed warm, the light stayed on, and Prometheus walked in like a man returning something he'd borrowed, except he wasn't returning anything. He was taking. The fennel stalk was nothing, a hollow reed from a giant plant, the kind that grew wild on hillsides, its outer shell hard and woody around a soft, smoldering core. It had no weight. It had no dignity. He placed a single ember from the divine fire inside it, just enough to live, just enough to travel. The light bled faintly through the fibers, visible if you looked. This was the thing he'd been carrying since the corridor, not yet lit, not yet stolen, just chosen. He closed his hand around it and walked out into the dark, carrying something small enough to hide and large enough to change everything. The ember made it, and Prometheus wasn't finished. He went back, again and again. He showed a man how to open the earth and put seed into it. Before that moment, hunger was something that arrived from the outside, from weather, from season, from the caprice of a world that owed you nothing. Prometheus handed someone a handful of grain and showed him that the ground would return what you gave it. The man knelt in the dirt and understood that next spring was now a promise he could make. He showed a woman how to press a mark into wet clay. The mark stayed after her hand lifted. She stared at it, this thing that was her and not her, this thing that would survive her. A single impression in mud, and suddenly a thought could outlast the body that thought it. Each gift cost something he couldn't name and couldn't recover. He wasn't becoming less. He was becoming spent. Like a man emptying his pockets at the door before walking into a place he knows he won't walk out of. So when Zeus moved, there was no surprise in it. Not for Prometheus. The sentence arrived the way a door closes on a room you knew you were leaving. Final, quiet, and exactly the size of the opening. Hephaestus forged the chains. The same hands that had shaped the divine forge, the same hearth Prometheus had walked into in the dark to steal a single ember, those hands were now hammering iron into the form of his prison. The craftsman who held the fire was made to bind the one who took it. They brought him to Mount Caucasus, a mountain at the edge of the world, so remote it exists at the boundary between what gods know and what they bother to see. And there they drove the chains through rock. The cold was total, not the cold of winter or altitude or wind, the cold of stone that has never once been warm, at the edge of the world where the sky begins and nothing else does. No walls, no ceiling, no darkness, just exposure, absolute and permanent. The sky went on in every direction. Prometheus was chained to it before the sun rose on the first morning of his punishment. The iron held him the way iron holds everything, without opinion, without cruelty, with the simple mechanical indifference of a material that doesn't care what it's been asked to do. He could feel the stone against his back. He could feel the sky above him, open and enormous and offering nothing. He waited. Not the way someone waits for something unexpected, the way someone waits for something they chose. The shadow crossed his face before the sound arrived. He didn't close his eyes. The eagle, Zeus's instrument, his daily visitor, his appointed collector, arrived the way every consequence arrives, exactly when it was supposed to. And Prometheus watched it come the way you watch something you chose, not something that chose you. That isn't the same thing as peace. The night came, the eagle was gone. His side was already closing, flesh knitting back over the absence with a patience that felt like mockery. By morning, there'd be nothing left to show for it. By morning, the eagle would return, but the night was still the night, and in the night, he could see. Down below, impossibly far below, so far the mountain's base was just a theory, just a darkness thicker than the rest. The fires burned. Not one, not 10, scattered across the dark like something dropped and not collected, like embers from a forge no one had thought to sweep. They moved the way living things move. They gathered where the cold pressed hardest. They flickered when the wind came down from the peaks. He could see every one of them. They couldn't see him at all. Someone added wood. Someone reached toward the warmth without knowing what warmth had cost. And that not knowing was the oldest gift of all. Older than fire, older than the seeds, older than the marks in clay that would outlast every empire. He had taken the weight of the future off their shoulders and put it on his own, and now he was here, and they were there, and they were alive. The math said it was worth it. He still believed the math. But belief isn't peace. And the fires were so far away. And the night was very long.